This episode is brought to you by Blueprint Health. Blueprint Health is a measurement-based care platform for mental health providers. You can find out more about them by going to practiceoftherapy.com/blueprinthealth. And also this episode is brought to you by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com, the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers in private practice. They're who I use in my practice. Check them out at practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. Hello, I'm Gordon Brewer, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, where we explore the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast. This is session number 222 of the podcast, and so glad you've joined me. If this is your first time listening in, glad you're here, and if you're coming back for more, glad you're with us. I'm looking forward to you hearing from my guest today, Libby Rothschild, and Libby is a dietitian, and so it's going to be fun for you, I think, to hear her perspective and how she has created a company called the Dietitian Boss that is really helping other people in the dietitian field with growing their business. And she brings up a lot of great insight. And one of the things about it is that there is a lot of crossover on just particularly the business side of things about running various allied health businesses, whether it be mental health providers or dietitians, certainly physical therapists, sometimes chiropractors, other people in our field that are running small businesses. There's a lot that we can learn from each other and about how to structure our business and what makes for a successful business. And I know that you're going to really enjoy my conversation with Libby around this. One of the things, though, before we get to Libby, is I'd love for you to go over and check out the free webinars that we've got going on. And you can go to practiceoftherapy.com/webinars and learn about these free offerings that we have. Currently we've got three webinars that are up there, and they're automated webinars. So you get to pick the time that you want to watch the webinar and learn from it. And we've got three different topics up there now. One is on using Google Workspace in private practice. That's one of the most popular webinars that I have. The second one is scaling without failing, and that is on going from solo private practice to group private practice. And so if you're thinking about doing that, that is a good place to start, because I partner with my friend Dr. David Hall on that particular webinar, and we talk about the ins and outs of that. And the other one is on managed care financing, or AKA accepting insurance in your practice, and talk about some of the pros and cons of that. And if you listen to last week's episode, I'd kind of delve into that, of just talking about how things are changing in our professions. And so anyway, all of those are free offerings. All you have to do is go and sign up and pick your time. And again, you can get to those by going to practiceoftherapy.com/webinars to find out more about those free offerings. Also, got coming up here soon, and I think you can still get some tickets if you hurry, and that is to the Faith and Practice Conference. I'm going to be one of the speakers for that, but there's going to be a great conference down in Jekyll Island, Georgia. It's a wonderful venue. It's a new hotel that we're going to be at, and it's going to be right on the beach. But got a lot of wonderful speakers lined up for that. Got Julie Harris from Green Oak Accounting. Got Whitney Owens, who is helping put this together, or is putting this conference together. We've also got Uriah Guilford that's going to be there. My friend Jessica Tapana. Also Joe Sanok from Practice of the Practice. All of these great folks are going to be there, plus tons of others. and you're going to get to learn a lot about the business side of private practice, but also how to integrate your faith with your practice. And that may or may not be for everyone, but there are a lot of us out there that we really have what I like to refer to as a faith-informed practice. But anyway, looking forward to being at that event. I'm going to be speaking while we're there, and there's just I know, and just talking with Whitney, a lot of great fun activities there. So go over to practiceoftherapy.com/FIP to learn more about that conference and get in while you can, because there's only going to be a limited number of openings for that conference. So go ahead and check it out now before it's too late. And also, before we get to my conversation with Libby, love for you to hear from our sponsors, TherapyNotes and Blueprint Health. You know, as your practice grows, the systems and processes you have in place will keep your practice running smoothly. That's why it's important to have an electronic health record system that is specific to mental health providers. TherapyNotes is a complete practice management system with everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, meet with patients remotely, create rich documentation, and bill insurance, all right at your fingertips. Their streamlined software is accessible wherever and whenever you need it. They're who I use in my practice. And did I mention that they are one of the top-rated EHRs for mental health providers? Their support is also second to none. So be sure to check them out at practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. And be sure to use the promo code Gordon, just GORDON, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. That's therapynotes.com. And this episode is also brought to you by Blueprint Health. You know, one of the best ways to serve clients in your practice is through measurement-based outcomes. In fact, more and more third-party payers, aka insurance companies, are demanding measurable outcomes. And with more and more emphasis on good mental health, having a way to measure your outcomes just makes sense. Introducing Blueprint, the measurement-based care platform that administers, scores, and charts hundreds of symptom rating scales to give clinicians deeper insights into treatment progress. Ultimately, by helping behavioral health providers to grow top-line practice revenue, increase clinician satisfaction, and deliver more effective care. So be sure and check them out by going to practiceoftherapy.com/blueprint health. And by going to that URL, you can also get your first month free. Again, that's practiceoftherapy.com/blueprint health. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm so happy for you to get to know Libby Rothschild, who, if you don't know about her, she is a person behind Dietitian Boss. And so it's a lot. Most of the time we focus on mental health providers, but I feel like there's just a lot of crossover in the way that we do this type of service business for folks. But Libby, welcome.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, I would agree as far as the crossover dietitians and mental health care professionals, we're all healers, right? Yes. And there are so many nutrition practitioners in the space of dietetics that work really closely with mental health providers and for various health outcomes that, consumers need. So I'm happy to be here. And I love that we can all support one another and talk about running virtual and brick and mortar practices. Right.
Yeah. So as I start with everyone, Libby, why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you've landed where you've landed?
Absolutely. So I'm a registered dietitian. I've got a master's in clinical, and I was working in a clinical position, and I was very underpaid. So I believe registered dietitians The statistics of Labor and Bureau, I believe, are lower for dietitians than mental health care providers. I've looked at the data. So our average annual salary is $65,000 for registered dietitians, and we're required to have our master's degree. So we're required to have all this education, and 60% of us go into a clinical position, and the pay just doesn't match the investment we've made for our education. And I was actually paid $55,000 for my job. Obviously, I didn't have my negotiation skills on point at that time as a new clinician, and so I was working in the field, and I couldn't afford rent in New York City. Right? I mean, I was struggling to make ends meet, and so I worked additional revenue streams, consulting and teaching and operating a business on the side of my job as a clinical dietitian, and that I just accidentally came upon this business that I have now, which is really fun. So what I did is I was working 7 revenue streams at my hospital. I was doing overtime and teaching and speaking. And then one day, a friend of mine 4 or 5 years ago said, "Hey, Libby, why don't you go on social media and just share what you're doing? Because you're teaching and speaking, and that seems non-traditional for a dietitian." And it was. And I said, "Oh yeah, I would love to find more people like me," right? Because dietitians are overall pretty broke. Right? We are not lucrative. The top 5-10% make 6 figures in the field, according to statistics from our Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So I was looking for those 5-10%. So I went on social media to share my story, and I couldn't find anybody, but instead my peers came to me and said, after I shared my story on Instagram, at Dietitian Boss on Instagram, they said, "Can you help me make money?" And I said, sure. So I ended up coaching, and then the demand increased. I created a course, and then I ended up, my business grew pretty rapidly. We hit this 7-figure mark in 2020, which is really exciting. We're 4 years old in March of this year. And so I've been able to grow a team and create a proprietary process out of helping dietitians focus on their message, hone in on their mindset, and then create organic content on social and create a compelling offer, both passive income with a course and then group program, which is leveraged income. So we're not just stacking clients back to back all day. And then sales skills, right? Which is something us practitioners, specifically healers like dietitians and mental health care practitioners, usually, feel a little awkward about that. It's not really it's not really comfortable with most of us. So I've been able, after working with 1,000 dietitians, to codify my methodology, trademark it, and then hire a team and coaches to coach with me, and then support more dietitians for our ultimate mission, which is to create more private practice operators in a field where only 8% of us go into business. And with such low numbers, it doesn't really match the needs of consumers, right? A lot of people want health outcomes, various health outcomes, nutrition outcomes. And so if we're not there in a private setting, because a lot of us are trapped in clinical offices, people can't get the help they need from leading experts in the field. And dietitians are, the number one resource for food nutrition. So I was really motivated initially to feel like my work mattered and to get paid my worth. And then I've been able to create a business it's a mission business, right? We're backed on supporting the field and creating an experience where we can bring freedom and financial opportunities to practitioners. And then in turn, of course, help more consumers have that support, because we're out there creating more access, which is going to require a lot of passive income, right? So creating courses and leveraged income to help more people. And believe me, people need the help.
Right. You got my wheels turning here, just thinking about kind of the parallels between going from, working, particularly for mental health providers, going from agency work or clinical, I think about dietitians a lot of times work like in hospital settings and, places like that, but being able to step out and do exactly what you've identified in your niche, which is the individual kind of one-on-one or one-to-many kind of help around nutrition issues and that sort of thing. It just is great. And I think there's my guess would be is that there's just a lot of opportunity there for people.
A ton of opportunity. And there's also a lot of connection between mental health care practitioners as well, because a lot of people that have nutrition issues, they do also need the mental health and support. So I think there's a great opportunity for us practitioners in healing professions to work among each other and see how we can support one another, both for our mindset and then also for business, right? A lot of our clients will get, bridge relationships. They will make relationships with other mental health care practitioners and refer to them, which I think is so great. It's an opportunity for us to really help the client, right? Helping the patient and the end user is what it's all about.
Right. So a question that comes to mind for me, because I'd love to get your perspective on this. When you're working with dietitians that are maybe working in an agency setting or in a hospital or whatever setting, and they're thinking about, okay, I want to make the move into private practice. What are some of the things that they need to start thinking about as they make that move?
Yeah, great question. So I think that it's a lot of mindset. So there's this whole thought that private practice has to look and feel a certain way. And that's something that I try to bust as myths, right? Private practice does not mean you have to be in brick and mortar. It doesn't mean you have to take insurance. It doesn't mean you have to have coaches or clinicians working under you. So there's a lot of different ways that you can create a private practice. You can do a hybrid model. You can absolutely start on the side. So one of the first things I like to share with practitioners who are interested in going into private practice is think about what that might mean for you and what's realistic with setting some goals right now, which can include launching a small course, right? So I show our clients how to create a $97 online course. Right. It's under an hour. You're not creating a really long, lengthy course as your first digital launch, right? You're creating something that is consumable, that solves a problem that people have, that they come to you for. And even that alone as a revenue stream can be a great way to get things moving. Now, I think a lot of clinicians think that there has to be this traditional, it has to be 9 to 5, it has to be full time. And so I just want to share that that's not true. There's a lot of ways you can start, and it's a lot more easy and manageable than you might think. So it's just getting these ideas of what we've heard outside of our heads and thinking that we're not good enough. We can't start yet. We don't have what we need. We need more clinical experiences is the biggest thing I hear. That we have to go into this clinical or agency work because we're not good enough yet, or we don't have enough experience. When in our field, you're not required to have a master's degree. We have a dietetic internship we have to complete, 4 years education in the field. We definitely have what it takes. And there are small ways to start and build up our clinical skills as well as we are providing service and even products to consumers. So the two things is that demystifying that you don't need more experience, you can start, and then you can start small, right? So a lot of people think that it's this all or nothing mindset, and it's overwhelming, partially because we don't know much about business. I don't know about mental health care practitioners, but there's no mandatory curriculum about entrepreneurship in our field. So it's like we just don't understand what that looks like. And of course it feels overwhelming because we're getting all this information about different stages of business. And so we think because our peer or someone who's 10 years in has her or his business look a certain way, that ours has to look that way. And that's just not true. So it's, again, a lot of that mindset of not comparing yourself to the next person on social media, but to really think about yourself. And if we can do that and just say, what are some goals that I have? What are some small steps I can take? That's when I see the most success in practitioners, is when they can really focus on their mindset. Right.
Yeah. And I think that's a universal thing for a lot of entrepreneurs, is this whole imposter syndrome of comparing your start to somebody else's middle is probably not a fair thing to do for anybody that is going into this. And the other thing that you mentioned, Libby, that I think is just something that I think is really important to bullet point, is being able to think outside the box with moving into private practice or moving into, running a small business or being an entrepreneur, in that there are any number of ways to create money for yourself.
Yeah.
And just because you've gone to graduate school and you've got this degree and you've got this certificate that says this is what you are, that knowledge translates in a lot of different ways. And there's no rules that say you have to just do just that.
Yeah. And I don't know the personality profile of a mental health care practitioner specifically. I'm assuming it's similar to most healers, which is very compliance-based, right? Registered dietitians are very rules, systems, compliance-based. So it kind of goes hand in hand with what you said. It's hard for us to think that something doesn't fit in an actual box because in school we're taught that way. And we want to respect our licenses. We want to, be mindful of all of the laws that we need to be, if we want to care about our license, we have to prioritize that, right? We have to do our due diligence when it comes to business, but I do often see clinicians overemphasize that, and they almost let that create these barriers and obstacles instead of just doing the mindset work. And the mindset work is hard. And that includes exactly what you said, comparing yourself to yourself and not you to someone else's middle. And I try to be cognizant with my marketing as well on social media. I don't want to make it sound like people compare their journey to mine as well, or their journey to one of our clients' journeys, because it's always about looking from within and setting your goals. And that's what's hard for clinicians, is that thinking about what you want it to look like in midst of this world going remote can be really challenging. And I think that's why it's more important to have more representation of private practitioners, so we can get a sense as clinicians and healers, what are my options? Exactly what you said. We don't understand there's affiliate revenue, brand sponsorships, there's options to do speaking and teaching. Even if you do work in a clinical setting, like when I did, I found income opportunities at the hospital. I found some teaching opportunities. And I think people aren't aware of those non-traditional options that we can leverage. And what we need to do is build our communication skills. We need to build our opportunity, our leadership capacity, and our self-reflection, right? Our introspection skills to think that, we are worthy and we have the opportunity. And those aren't as, sexy as marketing some of the other things, but that's really where we need to start.
Right. I couldn't agree more, particularly around thinking about diversifying your income. I think, it's, again, I've learned a lot of stuff the hard way, but I think one of the things that, is real important, just like with investing. I mean, if somebody's doing, investing in the stock market, you want a diversity of things that you can potentially receive money from. And I think by really thinking about, doing just little things like you mentioned, affiliate marketing, being able to do some courses or creating, even doing some adjunct teaching, all of those kinds of things are ways to create additional income. And all of that compounds and adds up, and you end up doing pretty well financially by doing those things.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. And again, it depends on your exact pain points, right? So what are your concerns? That's where, again, looking within. Just because someone else makes money or is interested in 6 or 7 figures in annual revenues doesn't mean that, you as a clinician need to prioritize that. So I think the first step is asking yourself, what matters to you right now? And if it is brand recognition and thought leadership, which many of us in these fields care about, then setting a goal around that might be helpful. And if it is revenue, then looking at a way to come up with a strategy to prioritize what those goals are and be realistic about setting process goals. So oftentimes I see clinicians will set these lofty goals, which are great. And I love seeing people set big goals, but they forget the step where the process goals, meaning the work that you need to do to get there, is just as important, if not more important, than the actual destination, right? And that's where the whole "it's a marathon, not a sprint" comes in. As clinicians, we're just, it's a new school of thought for us as far as those business fundamentals are very new. And I think being kind to yourself and creating the environment to help yourself succeed, no matter how you want to diversify your revenue streams, is important, because there's going to be a lot of new things, right? Especially in this remote environment where you might need to learn how to use a project management system or tech integrations or email marketing, and things might not be working as you had wanted to, or maybe social media went down. So there's a lot of things that are going to throw us for a loop. Right? Or maybe you're working with a staff, a virtual assistant, and something happens with them, or they're sick, or something happens with their family. And so we as leaders and business owners have to develop those skills to pivot and be kind leaders and make decisions based on our values. And that takes a lot of self-work. It's not just something you wake up and do like that. That's really creating an environment where you can grow. And that it takes dedication and time, and it's really rewarding. But I think that practitioners don't realize that takes a lot of dedication.
Yes, absolutely. It's really a constant thing, as you're kind of mentioning, of sharpening the saw and really figuring out those things. And to go back to what you said a minute ago too, and folks hear this from me all the time, is you've got to start with your why. What is it what are your internal motivations for doing any of this stuff? and really staying focused on that.
Yeah. And that's the deep work that's hard. And whether it's telling your story or identifying, what's important to you. And I think that's so important because we all are going to have bad days and we're all going to have rough times. And so going back to your purpose, whether you've got a vision board on the wall or you're doing affirmations or some type of practice, is always going to be really helpful. And I see the most successful, practitioners in business are ones with clear whys, who also talk about it. They talk about it a lot. And I find that so inspiring, which is why I think creating an ecosystem of practitioners, not just in your own field of mental health care practitioners, but maybe looking at people in acupuncture, maybe some doctors and dietitians. It's really good to build and, like you said, sharpen your saw and build your business acumen, to really see other people, but then learn the skills to not compare and just be inspired by them and support them.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I'm curious if I'll put you on the spot a little bit. Can you think of someone or somebody you've worked with, or maybe a story about somebody that has kind of gone from that traditional kind of agency kind of work and built their practice, and what that looks like and how did they get there?
Absolutely. So as far as our clients who have done that, we've got clients who both have done it while they've been in their clinical position, and those who have skipped clinical or agency work and just gone straight into it. And their journey might be that they ramped up. Of course, there's various journeys for different people depending on their goals. If I were to give you one example of a past client of ours named Colleen, she is, if you find her on Instagram, no.food.rules. So she trademarked No Food Rules. And she helps women identify food rules and eliminate them so that they can live a life of food freedom. And she was working, when we started together, she was working a clinical job. And through our coaching, she was able to identify, firstly, develop a really clear brand and use social media to market her brand. By following the Dietitian Boss method, and she was able to leverage her income. So she did have some limited coaching that she provided for her clients. She also first did boot camps, and then she started running group programs, and then she was able to parlay that into a membership. And now she's got a successful membership. She's got a monetized YouTube account. She was taking private clients like on a limited basis last time we spoke, but she can choose how she wants those income streams to look, and they've looked different over time. So to share how she was able to do that, she defined her brand. She used social media consistently to market her messaging and share how she was able to transform women's lives and help them eliminate food rules so that they could live a life of food freedom. And she shared her journey and talked about the pain points of her clients, and that attracted people, right? And then she acquired the skills to be able to sell them into her services. And then she was able to, with her offer, package it in a way that delivered what they needed, and was able to create systems and processes around customer support and the operations of an offer. And then with feedback and a lot of clients going through the offer, she was able to adjust the offer to fit more in line with what she wanted, which was shifting from that group to then a membership where it's more community-based and a little bit less of her delivering the service. And that's what she chose to do, right? Now, our clients all have different ways of how they choose to do that. But that was her journey, going from a clinician to a full-time practitioner who gets money from, I know you mentioned multiple revenue streams, brand sponsorships, monetized YouTube membership, and I believe she also launches a course. I think it's once or twice a quarter. So she's got a lot of ways that she's making money, and she's a leader in her field. Right.
Yeah. I love that story. That I think that again goes back to this whole thing of thinking about diversified ways of creating income, as opposed to being in business where you're, the thing, our product and service, both as mental health providers and dietitians, is our knowledge and our expertise and our time. And that's what we offer to people. And so when you can go from the one-to-one kind of model to the one-to-many, that's when things can really change for us.
Absolutely. And I think also there's a process during that shift, right? It's not an overnight, I want to offer one-to-many leveraged income. It's like, I'm going to work less hours overnight. It is, there's some systems that are going to have to be put into place, and some testing, and then some strategy to ask yourself as a practitioner, how do I want this to look? What's the customer journey? right? How do I want my customer to go from one offer to the next? And then one thing I see a lot of practitioners skip is, who is this offer for and who is it not for? Right. And just really getting clear with the offer and how it's going to help the right type of person, and then marketing towards that type of person, and then having a plan to progress them, so that you can ideally retain clients in whatever offer mix that you've created, and then, give some space to evolve that. And that's obviously a little bit more of an advanced concept in online business, because at first, when you're starting out, for your listeners who are beginners, you just want to get those clients. Right. Even if you're offering leveraged income, even if it's a group program or a course, your goal is to get clients. And then once you're fully stacked up, and whether you're doing however you're offering, right? Let's assume that you're coaching or you're offering counseling. The next step would be just to have an option of income that perhaps doesn't involve as much of you or involves less of you, if it's a course, or even if it's you're offering some group on the side. And then the third thing would be to look at how you're going to use that income stream and with respect to your other income streams, and how you want it to look. Do you want that to be your side business or whatever you created? Do you want that to be your primary income stream? Do you want that to be part of your offer mix, where people are going to mainly come through your passive source and then they're going to get to you? So there's a lot of strategy to figure out how you want the customer journey to look, and how that's going to impact both the client and you, right? So we have to think of both of those things. Like, how do you want to receive monies? Are you going to look at scale? Are you looking at bringing more people on the front end, or however that's going to look? And then you always want to make sure it's benefiting the client. And that's where we get a little more strategic, is identifying how those income streams are going to support your business goals, and then always thinking about the customer. Because if you don't put the customer first and think about their vision, you're not going to create a sustainable, ethical practice. So it's always about how you can benefit them. And there's a lot of nuance to that, right? Because you can offer low ticket, meaning something that's inexpensive, and you can offer high ticket, even if you're not delivering it. So maybe you're offering a private consulting package, but you're actually having someone on your team provide that coaching. So this is where it gets really fun, and there's a lot of nuance. So this is why business is such a fun topic, because there's so many ways it can look. But some practitioners that are new to it can also say, "Oh my goodness," that's where they say, "I don't know where to start." Right?
Yeah. Right. And you mentioned you have kind of a method that you've kind of developed. You want to give us a thumbnail view of that method?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the Dietitian Boss is a proprietary process that helps you focus on your mindset. So first and foremost, business fundamentals start with you. So identifying your growth or fixed mindset, ideally shifting towards a growth-oriented mindset. So I have a whole framework for identifying and working towards developing a growth-oriented mindset in business, which is super important, especially we've got remote work, all kinds of stuff. And there's a lot of new learning that as practitioners that we need to adapt to, even social media, right? That's a big topic, I'm sure, with your audience as well. And how does that impact or how does that affect the work you're doing, and what role do you want to play in your brand recognition? Even if you're fully booked, social media is it's your business card. It's your online business card. And so creating a mindset, a growth-oriented mindset around social media is really important. So first pillar of my methodology is mindset. Second pillar has to do with messaging. And there's nothing more important than clarifying a strong message, especially in our space, because there's a dime a dozen food freedom practitioners, weight loss practitioners, people in these spaces that are saturated. So what's important is to define your value proposition. How are you unique? What is it about you that's not the same as the next person? So messaging is very important. And we got to start with the messaging. First the mindset, and then the messaging and the strategy around that. Third pillar of my framework is creating an offer that supports your goals, right? So the strategy of where, even if it's short term. So we've got a lot of women who are pregnant and they don't want to deliver the service. You might want to go right to a course, right? If you're not able to deliver that service. And then we have some people that say, I'm taking insurance. Can I just do something small on the side, right? I want to get my toes wet and offer a group program. So then we're going to create the offer that's based on your goals and your unique situation in life right now. So that could be coaching or consulting. That could also look like more leveraged income that will be one-to-many in various forms. And then the next piece of my framework would be enrollment skills. So finding a way to get people into your product or service. So sales conversations, sales calls, if you're selling people into consulting or counseling or coaching. And then it's setting up the right copy and a landing page if they're going to buy your course. And then the final step of my framework would be content. So I'm known for social media and helping practitioners leverage social media to increase their brand visibility and then solve problems on social that get people to say, I want to work with you, whether it's a product or a service. So really having your messaging translated well onto your content. And I do have a free guide that shows you how to just plug and play some of the captions I've created that you can check out on one of my resources that's free for your listeners. And it's really helping you take the guesswork out of just putting something out there that is going to represent you well, but it has to speak to the problems that your target market struggles with and show the transformation that you provide. So I've got a lot of frameworks and checklists and processes around content creation, but it's not rooted in the tactics, which a lot of people try to market. Oh, it's about reels and it's about colors, and it's less about the tactics and it's more about the messaging, right? And really being there to showcase that you can help support your client's transformation, whether it be that, again, whatever that outcome might be in our world in nutrition, that might be sports performance, right? That might be life cycle nutrition. It might be feeding for growth. It might be weight loss. It might be food freedom. But that's really where the content has to show, is about the problems you're solving. And let me tell you, practitioners push back a lot with that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Well, Libby, I've got to be respectful of your time, and this has been a great conversation, and I think it's given us a lot to think about. Tell folks how they can find out more about you and where they can get your stuff.
Absolutely. Well, it's pleasure is mine. So I've absolutely enjoyed chatting with you. So thank you for making time. So if you go on bit.ly, and then it would be /podcastlibby. You can find some resources from what I talk about on this podcast. And I've got a free caption download that you can grab. And you can also find me on social media at Dietitian Boss and say hello. And you can see an example of what I mean about creating content that speaks to the problems that you're solving and the pains that your audience experiences. And that is how, you can better illustrate your brand and get sales. So that's definitely something that I will live and die by.
Yes. And we'll have links here in the show notes and the show summary so you can get to that easily. Well, Libby, again, thanks so much for being on the podcast. This has just been, again, a great conversation. I think given us a lot to think about, and just in the crossover world between dietitian world and mental health world. And there's a lot of the concepts are very much the same in terms of running either type of practice. So thanks again. Well, big thanks to Libby for being on the podcast. And I love the stuff that we were talking about, because having ways to diversify your income within private practice is an important piece, and really getting ahead and really kind of, in many ways, breaking that glass ceiling, particularly as a solo practitioner, but also as a group practitioner, of really thinking outside the box about different ways to reach more people and also create streams of income that are maybe not within the realms of traditional therapy. And I loved what Libby had to say about all of that. So be sure and check her out at dietitianboss.com, but also check out the links here in the show summary and the show notes to get there quickly. And again, I wanted to remind you to be sure and check out our free webinars at practiceoftherapy.com/webinars. And you can find out about those free webinars, automated webinars, where you get to pick the time that is convenient for you to watch the webinar and see, learn some things. And so be sure and check that out. And also, as always, big thanks to our sponsors of the podcast, TherapyNotes, TherapyNotes.com, and Blueprint Health. And you can find out more about Blueprint Health at practiceoftherapy.com/Blueprint Health. And so, folks, thanks again for joining me for this episode. Look forward to being in your ears in future episodes. Oh, and be sure and take time to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. Take care, folks. You have been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free Private Practice Startup Guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.